So this was an article that was written in 2022 where they're talking about nutrition psychiatry as the future of mental health and saying that even the American Psychiatric Association is featuring nutrition in their broad spectrum and in the form of broad spectrum micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals, as a viable treatment for mental health in their textbook, complementary and integrative treatments in psychiatric practice. However, it is still not considered widely accepted in mainstream medicine. And I hope at some point that they move this information out of the complementary category and into just, this is how we need to treat our clients. This is not complementary. That makes it sound like it's a side dish, but it's not. It should be the main course, and all the other stuff should be the side dish. So that's what I'm glad you guys are all here, because that's why I love teaching this, because I can do this in my office, but I'm only touching one client at a time. But when I've got a group here who can all go out and do this with your own practices, it's exciting to me to know that we're touching together that many more people. So this is looking at nutrition psychiatry and improving mental health by what you eat. And this is basically saying that there is data that is showing that it matters what we eat, but that we don't understand how. And so they're looking for the scientific evidence. But we all know that that research takes about 17 years to catch up to what we do in our offices. And so I'm not waiting around for all of the research to support what we need to be doing when we know that we need to be doing this. If you think about every cell in our body comes from the food that we eat. It is supported by that. It's regenerated by that. So why would we not support our brain health with good food? That is, to me, just seems like the most common sense thing in the world. So it's great when I can quote research and I can say, and I'll show you some research today that I can say, here's what the research supports. Certainly for some of our clients, trying to get them to change their diet when they're picky eaters or they have sensory issues, changing their diet can be a hard sell. So if you can support why you're suggesting something with some research, it's helpful. But in terms of my own practice and what I know from my own personal experience and from what I've seen with my clients, I don't feel like I need to wait around for all the evidence. It's there. It's actually already there. There's tons of evidence. Okay, so in the DSM-4 and in the DSM-5. I don't know how many of you are familiar. I mean, I know you're all familiar with the books and why we use them. We use them for coding so we can get reimbursed. And I do want to mention, if you were at my first talk with eCare, you've seen these slides before. And so just sit tight. I just want to kind of get everybody caught up. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides, but these first few ones are the same as what I've shown before. Because I think they make a great point in getting us started. The DSM was written and not intended to be used for the way that it's being used now, which is to identify mental health. And we all live by and breathe by that Bible because that's how we get reimbursed. But Dr. Thomas Insel, who was the medical director of the National Institute of Mental Health, told Dr. Mark Hyman at a dinner in Washington, D.C., that the DSM has 100% accuracy, but 0% validity, and that it provides a perfect way to describe symptoms, but has nothing to tell us about the underlying biology of what causes them. And so this is the foundation of what we're talking about. When you look at the DSM, it's a cluster of symptoms, and our clients present that to us. So number one, we go by self-report because we're the only profession in the physical health area that doesn't get to X-ray or look at the part of our bodies that we are treating, unless you go to, say, Dr. Amon's clinic and you get a scan. But for most of us, we don't do that, and our clients probably can't afford it. So we have our clients come in, they sit down on a couch, and they tell us what's happening with them, and then based on what they tell us, we decide what's wrong. So. And I can give you a great example. I had a client recently And he came to me complaining about a lot of different things, his marriage, his work, procrastination, and in his procrastinating with work, and his marriage was falling apart, and he was short with his children, and he was worried about his relationship with all of his family. And so we started down the path of nutrition, and we started down the path of depression because he sounded depressed. But at the end of the day, he ended up that he has ADHD. And as an adult, he was never diagnosed. And so now he's diagnosed and he's on medication and he's doing significantly better. But in terms of what he presented to me, it sounded like depression. But once I referred him to a psychiatrist, and they did some further testing, and I think he went to a psychologist and had some deeper testing based on what I had suggested, came out that it was ADHD. So we have to make a decision based on what our clients are telling us, but we don't know what's going on biologically. We don't know what is happening at a cellular level. Why do they have ADHD? Why do they have depression? Why do they have anxiety? We are very quick to jump on treating the symptoms and not treating the underlying condition. And I'll give you a great example. My son is a doctor. He's an anesthesiologist. And when we came back, some of you, when you came on, you heard us talking about the fact that I just came back from Turkey and Greece. And my husband and I were doing a FaceTime with my granddaughter because we hadn't seen her in about 4 weeks because of our trip. And so we were doing FaceTime. And while we were FaceTiming, and we'd only been home a few days, my husband started to fall asleep on the call, like literally closing his eyes and falling asleep. And so my son said, Dad's falling asleep. She's a little antsy. Let's, reschedule. Fine. And during the conversation, we had told my son that my husband had fallen asleep on our food tour in Istanbul. We were waiting for some stuff to come to the table. I had gone to the bathroom to wash my hands. When I came back, there was water all over the table. And my husband said, I spilled my water. He said, my hand was on top of the glass and I fell asleep at the table, and I leaned over and the water spilled everywhere. So we told my son both those, that story. And then he observed my husband falling asleep on this phone call. And so he texted us the next day, or he called us the next day, and he said, Dad fell asleep in Istanbul and he fell asleep on our phone call. Maybe he should think about taking Adderall. And my husband is 70 years old. He does have ADHD, but he's never been treated. He's not on medication. And so I said to my son, we had been walking all day in Istanbul, and what we determined was that your dad was dehydrated. And so while we were sitting at the table, he drank a bunch of water, and then we ate some food, and he perked right up, and he was able to go on a 5-hour walking tour that evening, and he was fine. And today, when he fell asleep, we're renovating our bathroom. He spent 8 hours doing physical labor, hanging stuff and banging nails and walking up and down the stairs and doing all this stuff. So he was just tired. And so my son said, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Okay, I feel better. And I thought it's so interesting. And I'm not trying to throw my son or anyone in the medical profession under the bus, but that is how they are trained, to treat the symptom and not find out what's causing it. There were no questions about, why do you think Dad's so tired? We had perfectly great explanations for why he was falling asleep. And after that, we kept him really hydrated on the trip, and we never had a problem after that. So that's how the medical profession is trained. And we have to learn how to help people to think a little bit outside the box, think a little bit more about what's going on a biological level.